We're going to talk about transitions now, and there's a few different types of transitions that we're using in this situation here. We have an LVT, which is a luxury vinyl tile in this kitchen, and it's pretty thin, so our laminate comes up to it. By the time I got my pad there, it's flush with this floor. And so the type of transition that we're going to use here is called a reducer. And what it's going to end up being is it's going to be flush to the floor and it rounds down to it. And so that's the type of transition that we're going to use in this situation. Now, if you look on the back here, this is going to cover, this lip right here is going to cover the laminate. Now, you don't want it to be tight like that. You want to have somewhat of a gap there, just like you do along the wall. So that's what you need to figure. So here is our line that we're going to follow, the LVT line. So I need to stay away from that line with my laminate a 1/4 inch. Now I've got another transition here in the doorways that we'll talk about, but this is the same thing. This is called a square nose. Now what this is going to go up to is carpet. So here's the other side. Let's see what it looks like there. Now this covers the laminate also, and we'd want to have a gap in there. And now the carpet is going to tuck to this side of it. And so basically what we're looking to do is measure how wide this part of the transition is, and then add our 1/4 inch. Well, if you see on this one, if I add the 1/4 inch, and I'm just going to go to the one here over, I'd need about 3/4 of an inch. And so what I do is I measure this transition too, and it's going to be the same thing. If I want to go a 1/4 inch away from that, that's going to be about 7/8 wherever this ends. And so I'm going to put this down where I know it's going to end. And I'm just going to figure in about right there is where I want to end my laminate. And so I can just take my tape measure and mark it, or it's about 3/8. And so now I'll go down everywhere, and that's how far I want to end my transition, or my laminate from that transition, so that I have room for contraction and expansion. Now we'll go down and we'll talk about the transition, the square nose in the doorway, where the carpet ends. Okay, so really what this is going to look like is we fit that transition in, and I want to keep a gap there from that tack strip that we put in, about a 1/4 inch, so that we can tuck this carpet in. And so now I need to figure this is going to be centered in the doorway, so that when the door's shut, the carpet's going to look like it's flowing out into this part of the hallway, and the laminate will look like it's flowing into the bedroom. So now I just need to figure out where that mark is going to be, make a mark, and then I'll measure my laminate to that. And so I know that I got that, the back of this piece that sticks out is about 3/8 of an inch, and I want to have a 1/4 inch gap. So if I know that my transition is going to end there, I can even just make a little dot down there on the, I just want to make sure that I'm going to end this in the right spot. I'm just going to come in 1 inch right there. Now if I stick my transition down there, and I see, and I know that it ends about right there, I know that that's going to fall right where I want it to be. And so now what I'm going to want to do is transfer that on both sides. And so I'll just measure from the laminate 1 1/4 and 1 1/4 down here. And now I'll snap a line there, and that line right there is where I'll end my laminate on this one. And I'll have to put some pad underneath here still. The other thing that I want you to keep in mind, that when you're measuring for your transition to stick in the doorway, you want to measure it a couple of times and get the right measurement. And then you want to put some blue tape on the edge of it, and then you would cut into the blue tape on your mark so that you don't chip out the transition at all. And so that's just a nice little tip that you can use to be able to finish your transitions off so they look really nice. So what we have is one of the doorways right here, and what I did is I took two pieces. I didn't try to shove this in one piece, and I measured this door because I cut underneath it so I can slide under, and I measured it and I added about 3/8 of an inch. So it's 30, so I made it so it was going to be 30 3/8. So I have a little bit to go under each side. I took two pieces. And so now what I'm going to do is stick this in, and I'll slide it. Oops. I'll get this other piece in there and make sure I make both doors underneath so it looks good. Now you can get those in. Now I left a nice gap there for my T-mold to go in there. So now I got the T-mold in there, and you can see when I move it back and forth, there's plenty of room in there so that I know I have a gap in there that isn't going to push it. So that's how you put those pieces in. Okay, so we're on to our last row here, and I want to show you, I got this row started, so I know where this one's going to be, so I'm going to make my mark. Now I'm coming up here, and I just took another piece of wood here, and you could use a speed square in this situation too, but if you get this straight, the two edges straight together, it's going to work. I know that this is where my laminate is going to end. So if I get this on straight, I know that right there is where I want to set that next row that I'm going to mark, because it lines up with right there where I'm going to end. So now I'll pull this row out. I'm going to start with a full piece here, and I can just kind of slide it back and forth here and just make sure where it's going to not line up with anything. So I'm just going to figure out where I'm not going to line up with that line right there or any of the other ones anywhere close. And now I know that this is where my first piece is going to go for that row, and I'll just transfer my mark right there. So now I'll have to come at a 45 with that, and I'll just use my speed square to do that. Now I'll just keep adding down the row, and we'll show you what we're going to do to mark this one. So now we got to the end with this starter row, and I'm just going to make my mark like we've been showing you this entire time. I'll go cut this, we'll stick it in, and then we'll go through on marking this last row and how to put it in. So now we're ready to start marking it, and I know that we cut this pretty straight earlier, so I'm just going to measure now, and I already checked to see if it's straight, and it is. And so I know that because that's the case, I can just go off my mark right here, the 1/4 inch, make a mark there, make a mark here, and I got a straight edge that I can use that's about 6 feet, so I can extend it about 6 feet. And now I can take my straight edge and stick it on the floor, or even use a piece of laminate here and just draw my line that I'm going to cut to. Just be careful so you don't scratch the floor. Just line it up and draw your lines all the way down. Now we'll continue on down here, and we'll just keep doing our marking. We're going to run it under that vent. So I'm coming around the corner. I'm just going to keep marking, just like we've been showing you. So we'll keep marking down this wall, and then I'm going to show you how we'll put this in. This one's going to be a little bit different on putting it in the way that we're going to do a few of these. And so I'm going to show you a couple of tricks that are going to help you on some of the more difficult ones. Alright, so I want to finish this last row right here, and what I need to do is I need to pull this out first though, because I need to put this piece, which we already cut, in place. And so I'm going to slide it under. And I also have my back row that we already cut in too. Part of it right here you can see that we have this in. And one of the reasons why is because if we don't put it in now, it'll be too hard to get it in after. And so now we're going to have to try a few different ways of just trying to work it in. And so I push that in, and now I'll take this board and I'll slide it in, but I got to get it underneath a little bit of that one. And now I'm just going to slam it back into there. You can see it locked in. Now before I go any further with that, I'm going to put this backboard in. And I can actually lock that. And I'm just kicking it with my hand or hitting it with my hand to get it in. Now what I can do is make sure that I got this in place where it's supposed to be. And now I can just take my tapping block and start tapping it in. And if you can't get it in all the way with the tapping block, now I can just kind of beat it a little bit with my tapping block and my rubber mallet. But this is a spot where you can damage it, so you want to be very careful. Just try to get it to lock together. You can see how that tightened up. So it takes a little bit of work to get these rows in here, but this is definitely the way you're going to want to go about it. Now I took the lip right here. You can see how it's got that lip on there. And this is easy to damage your laminate if you hit it too hard. And I just wrote it right on the edge there and I gave it a tap. It was kind of the finishing tap. Very easy to damage it that way though. And so now you can see I already have this piece in. I have a seam in the middle of the door right here, so this piece I can just slide in now. Get it in place. And so I'll be able to tap that this way. And now we'll start, before we tap any of that together, and start working from this way, that way. So we're going the opposite direction now. Makes it a little more difficult to install that way, but sometimes you have to be creative on how you're putting this stuff in. The last row is definitely the most difficult row to go in, so this is where you want to use your stuff, your other tools that you got. Now you can see I got this gap right here, and I got to try to close that up and close up this gap. So it's a little bit of beating and a little bit of using your pry bar. But you can see it's coming together. And this is why you want one of these that are good, not one of those little tin chintzy ones. And trust me when I tell you that they're chintzy, the ones that you're going to see at the home improvement store. So now you got it up to there, and I just need to keep going right here. I'm almost to the end there, where I can start doing it the normal way. You can still see I got a gap running right here. And so now I'm just going to use a pry bar. I can try to use that method too. Sometimes that isn't going to be good enough, so you just need to force this in there. If you bang it, you can see a few taps and it goes. now I'm coming to putting this piece in. And so I'm just going to slide this in now. And get it down to about there. And now I can just tap this way. Now I can just take my tapping block and stick it right here on the end and start tapping. Now we'll just take our pry bar and I'll just take our bar here again, put in the finishing taps. Now we just went through the most difficult part of the hallway. We're all done. We all got it we have it all tapped in. I'll go through, I'll check to make sure there's not any gaps in the joints, and just fine tune it if I need to. And now I'm down to the very end here where I've got the last two simple pieces to put in. I got to put my transitions in, and then we're all done. Okay, we're going to start putting these transitions in now. You can see how these are fitting in here once again. Now to put these transitions down, you can use a construction adhesive and then weigh them down, or you can nail them with some smaller nails. You want to make sure if you do nail them though, that you kind of stay over a few inches so that you don't split the end. And then make sure that you're going to go through the part where it's not going to hit the laminate and stop the laminate from expanding and contracting. And so just put those transitions on and then you'll be all done. Do some trim, some quarter round. I hope that through this video you were able to learn lots and be able to say, so that's how you do that several times. Okay, so now you want to go through, you want to pull all those screws out that you put in and get them out so that the floor can expand and contract, and then put your base on, fill any nail holes that might not get covered by that base, and you're good to go.